Gonna say an intro thing, and then we're just gonna get into it.
Cool.
Perfect. All right.
Cool. Hopefully,
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Bummin Out with James. I'm here today with photographer extraordinaire Omari Spears. Thanks for joining me.
hello. Yeah, no problem.
So this is super exciting, and I feel like every time I see you, and this is true in this space too. I get a little like starstruck. I got there's a real a feeling of proximity to greatness, and so I just want to name that because that creates a little bit of nervousness on my part. But so you're a photographer. Um, I guess because as someone who is a show photographer and like that is at least for the people who are our mutual friends, that's like the primary way I would imagine people know and recognize you. I wanted to start off by asking, um, where does photography fit in your life and world? And you could think about that now, but also in the long trajectory of your life. Like, where does this fit in? What stuff does it connect to? All that.
Yeah, I think that if I'm thinking about it, I guess like a twofold answer, but like in a more immediate way, since I pretty much only do show photography, like all the photography that I do is related to musicians or like artists in some way. So right now with COVID stuff happening, it's like a lot less present in my life. Like I'm shooting a lot less stuff. Um, like I can't think of what the last thing I went to was, but like I'm not really going out right now. So yeah, there's not too much photo stuff happening for me. Last year there was a book that I worked on and was part of that. There was like a group of different photographers in different cities, and like the focus of the book was like taking photos of venues while they were empty, and like it was uh, the money from the book went to like help venues and stuff like that. So that was like a cool thing that I got to do. That was like a more COVID friendly version of show photography, but it was mostly just like, I don't know, closer to like just taking pictures of the inside of buildings. But that was a lot of fun. But yeah, my day to day, I guess right now, and like photography as like a thing that I'm thinking of right now is it's a lot less present than it used to be, just because I can't go out and photograph shows. But I still love photography. It's still like a thing that I love to do, and like I don't know. Whenever I get into a hobby, I think I just kind of like get into it really hard, and that's kind of what ended up happening with photography and how I ended up like just being so into it. But yeah.
So did it start with show photography? Was that your first sort of foray into the medium?
Not really. So I guess a lot of steps backwards. I only started doing photography after college, and it was I bought like a DSLR for like after a bit of working at the first job that I had after college. And the intention was to do video stuff with it because I really like to edit videos. Like I've always liked to edit videos, and I never really shot videos though. So I would like edit other stuff that I didn't shoot myself or like stuff from video games or whatever. And so I took a course that was like video ethnography. And so we basically just had to make a documentary in that course in school. And I really enjoyed it. And after school, it was like, I was working at a law firm, like a real estate law firm, and that's a really boring thing. So I think that part of my motivation was like, wow, I'm super bored. I'm not like super into this job. Like the people are fine, but real estate law is super boring. So I thought like, okay, maybe I can like I like doing video stuff. Maybe I'll start trying to come up with video projects for myself. And so then I got the DSLR. But through learning it, I like learning how to use it. I learned how to do photography stuff from like YouTube tutorials and stuff like that. And then I just kind of like fell into doing photography. So I was really into like street photography at first. And then I was just kind of like shooting like whatever I could. Like there were like little portrait meetups that I'd go to and stuff like that. And I was also getting into going to shows a lot because I didn't really do that too much like before college. I went to some shows at the school that I went to, and then I went to like I started going to a few after I graduated, and I got in the habit of going to shows alone because like at school, if there was something happening and it like seemed pretty cool and I had friends that didn't want to go, like I didn't want that to stop me from going. So I kind of continued that on post college, and so this is a very long way of me saying that like me learning how to use the DSLR and me also like getting more into going out to shows, I was like, oh, let's just mush them together. And then there's like a few more steps, but eventually they folded into each other.
That's really interesting. So I guess I don't know what I was. I feel like every time someone's really good at something, I always picture them being like four and like like crawling up to the camera and then picking but uh, this is so I guess if so you're self-taught like in if you're saying YouTube tutorials and such and like going back to the early days would you um, would you classify yourself as like a I'm not. I'm not. I don't speak to that many photographers about their work, so I don't really. I don't know like the lingo, or whatever. But would you consider yourself like a very technical photographer?
Um, that's a fun question. I think that like on a certain level, I don't know. I guess sort of is the answer, and then me like fleshing that out a bit more is that I always think kind of when it comes to technical stuff for photography about like just knowing how to use the camera itself, like that part of the technical aspect versus like composition and like those sort of rules and things like that. But I think the thing that I always find really important about like the actual like using the camera and knowing what it can do thing is that like the camera that I have, I've had for a while. It's not like the very first camera that I had, but I like know it pretty inside out, or I know what I want to do with it pretty inside out. And I think that like on a technical level, that is always something that I think is super beneficial for me at least. I don't. It could be different for different people, but I think that like it's really important that you get to the point where like the camera doesn't get in the way of what you want to do. Like I know what I want to do with my camera, so the fact that I kind of like know it like the back of my hand makes that a lot easier because like the less time I have to spend thinking about like oh like what can I do, like what's available, like what are my options, or like what does this button do and stuff like that, the more time I can just think about like the actual photography part of it. So I always found that really important, and I kind of feel that way about a lot of things. Like I feel like there should be like a really good foundation of what I'm doing, like, and so I guess in the with photography, like knowing how to use my camera, knowing what I want to do, like in terms of like the lenses that I take with me to a show and stuff, is something that really helps inform like what I'll be doing that night at a show.
It hadn't even occurred to me that there was a distinct like yeah. I guess I wasn't even. I was sort of only thinking in the world of composition. I mean, are you like I guess I sound like a baby, but like, are you like I don't know, like so you got lenses and like different lenses. Are you like changing settings as you go and like I don't know, can you can you like without looking just like like cue it up for the right kind of shot? Like how
Sort
much
of can.
modification is happening? You know?
Yeah, it really depends a lot. Like it depends on the venue and it depends on like I guess the venue is honestly the biggest thing because like the all the venues will be lit differently. So if something like the Sinclair, I guess is a good example because the Sinclair is going to be a place that like it has like lights, like there's real lighting at the Sinclair versus like something like a bar or something where there's not that, or like someone's house where it could just be like some string lights or whatever. But the light's going to be changing the whole time at the Sinclair. So that's something that you have to like keep in mind. And if like I've just been there so much that like I kind of have a feel of like, okay, cool. Like when the lights are purple, I'll probably have to do like more of this and less of this and whatever. So it's just like there's like the balancing like the aperture and the shutter speed and the ISO, and it's that's like the core bit of photography, I guess, or like the core bit of like the actual using the camera part of photography, and it kind of remains true like whenever you go to a show and stuff like that. And the same thing for lenses. So like there's going to be, I mean, I guess the Sinclair again. If I'm comparing the Sinclair to like Great Scott or something like that, like I love Great Scott to bits, or like loved, I don't know. But yeah, I'm going to be bringing like a different lens for the Sinclair versus Great Scott, just because Great Scott's a lot darker and the lights aren't changing the whole time the way that they would be at the Sinclair. So that's like a different sort of thing to pack. And if I like bring something that's outside of the usual lenses that I want to bring to Great Scott, it might be dependent on the act or something. So like if I were to see like I've seen like Lamelda played at Great Scott before, and like Lamelda is someone who, if I'm seeing like Lamelda versus seeing like, I'm trying to think of someone that's not Lamelda,
What's
but
another band?
yeah, I just can't think of any other ones. But I guess the point that I'm trying to make is that for someone like Lamelda, you can get a lot more like detail shots or something, because it's a lot more of a like, it's kind of, you'll get more like stripped down songs, which is like a performer in their instrument. So if I'm bringing like a 70 to 200 at Great Scott, it would be for like a very specific reason. Like, hey, this is someone who like at a certain point, at least on stage, it'll just be them and their instrument or whatever, and I can like keep on getting kind of like wide shots of the whole stage. But since it's just one person to focus on, I can kind of like zoom in more on like really close facial expressions or like hands and other details and stuff like that. So yeah, I think a lot of my decision making in comes from the venues, and then also the artists that I'll be shooting in the venues, because once you've shot at venues enough, then you get a really good feeling for the lighting conditions and like just kind of other stuff you want to or will run into when you're there.
So then, if if your camera is like acting as an extension of yourself, and you know you've got all that stuff, you know what you're doing. I think that the next thing is then is to sort of address the composition question. This is where, when Eleanor and I were first talking about this, this is something which is sort of baffling to me. So, could you walk us through like what is going through your head when you are at the show? You've got the camera and you're thinking about like the shot. I guess it is it a matter of like you are sort of hunting the shot and it's like you get it, or is it like is there a the degree of sort of just being in a spot and like hitting it and trying it out and there's a bit of an accident to it, or is it like are you doing like a whole bunch of shots and then just like seeing what works where, like what's the strategy to what you do?
Yeah, I think it's like honestly some combination of all of those things. Really, I if I'm so trying to think of the best way to think about it. But so for like hunting for a specific sort of shot or something like that, like I think that that will happen a lot when I can move around or something. So like if I'm at like Royale or something, there'll be a photo pit usually. So you get to be in the pit for the first two or three songs, or it depends on the artist sometimes. So it's like the first three songs or whatever. And so in the pit, I can like walk around and do whatever I want. So in a show like that, my strategy is usually like, well, I try not to take too many pictures because I get like I'll like without fail take too many in a barricaded shoot like that, because I'll be like, oh, I only have three songs, I gotta keep on taking photos. And then after it's just like, oh nice, I got 17 of the same thing. But like with that, when I can reliably move around a lot, then I think a lot less about um like hunting for shots and stuff like that, and think a bit more about like, oh okay, like I want to get like all the people and I want to get stuff from all these sides or something. But then if I'm somewhere else, like if I'm in like a basement or something, then I'm 6 feet tall, and I don't like standing in front of people. And so like from there it becomes me like I start in one place in the room and then I like look around the room and find the other little like places that I can squeeze myself into to take pictures from. And so then I'll have like an idea of what I can get from those angles and like the sort of shots that I'll be looking for. But I'll also be kind of like looking for times that I can move throughout the space without being like super disruptive and stuff like that. So in situations like that where it's like, okay, like I don't want to be stuck in the same corner the whole time and I want to have like variety in my shots, I'm also kind of like, when I'm in a new place, like, okay, I'm like crouching on the floor in front of people for a second, like let's make the best of this location and see what I can get from there. So with those ones, it's kind of falling into it more. But the hunting part there is mostly just hunting for like different angles that I can shoot from and stuff like that. So yeah, but it also, if I know that someone like I don't know, if there's a band and every show they bring out a bucket of paint and pour it on the stage, then like I'll know that that's something that's going to happen eventually. So I'll be like, that's going to be in the back of my head the whole time, like, oh, like don't miss the paint, like. But yeah.
Is this a an actual reference to a thing?
This is not an actual reference to a thing. I just couldn't think of anything.
I know it's happening at the next Barmer City gig. Wait for the paint.
Oh yeah.
I did once run a show where a band was using paints. I think to do maybe face paint. I don't remember exactly what was happening, but I remember we were doing it at the hostel where there's carpet, and I was just like, no, 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 no. And then like cut an hour later to me with like a the only implement that was available there, which was a wooden stir stick, like chipping dried paint off of the carpet, and it was just a I wish someone had told me the paint was coming.
Yeah.
But so I mean, the thing that brought this up was that when you shot the Bummer City Winter Gala, amazing shots, and I remember like watching you I was sort of look over and be like, is I was sort of expecting you to be like sort of stalking around and stuff, and I was like, oh, I guess and I don't even think I saw I don't know if I ever saw you take a picture, and then you posted like the best pictures that could be taken at that. I mean, it was crazy. It was like so good, and like it really in a way that is I don't think is easy to do. It can't be easy to do because I don't know. I didn't know anything about it. You really evoked the feeling of being there, like, and you were pretty much like it's. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. It sounded like this is one of the situations where you were kind of like hunkered down in a spot, but you just like really made it work, and it was incredible. Like, I don't know. I guess I'm a little. Like, could you talk through that particular example? Like, is it like I don't know. I want to know more about that because it was amazing.
Yeah, so I think that for that, like, I guess like in multiple stages, like knowing what I wanted to bring to that was like the first thing. So I've got like a handful of different lenses, and so one that I use a lot for shows is a 24 to 70. That's like a pretty popular like concert photography lens. It's also kind of like a popular like if you got like a full frame camera and you have a 24 to 70, it's like, oh cool, you can do a lot of stuff with this. And like I have like a mixed relationship with my 24 to 70 personally, but so if I'm bringing that, then it's cool because like I can shoot like relatively wide at 24 and then like relatively close to 70. But I think that usually in a situation like the Bummer City Gala, like I'll be looking to get like wider shots of like the room and stuff in it with the 24. And then I've also got this 35 millimeter prime lens, which is another go-to one that I have for a lot of shows because it lets in a lot of light. It's got like a 1.8 aperture, so like it's really good for low light situations. And then 35 is also like relatively wide, which is another nice thing. And then I brought this one's actually in front of me, so I can just pull it up. But I've got this like this is I don't know if you can even like see it that well, but it's this is like this like weird vintage lens that does like this fun sort of like swirly thing with the out of focus bits sometimes, and there's like other kind of weird stuff that I can do with this one that's fun. And so this is like something that I'll bring to stuff when I'm like, oh, like this seems like a place where I can just kind of like mess around with this lens because it's fun. And you have to manual focus this one too, so that's also part of it. Like if I'm seeing like a hardcore show or something, then I'm not going to bring this, or like something where someone's sprinting across the stage, like that won't work. But yeah, so I like I packed those few things, and then when I got there, I just kind of like I I knew that there were the two different rooms that the performances were happening in. So that was something that I'd like keep in mind, like when I had to transition from one room to the next room. And then I also like thought about where I wanted to be in the room, because I think that like if I'm stuck in one spot, I want to be able to like capture stuff going on in the room and also still be able to capture like the artists and get like maybe some tighter shots. So that's where the 24 to 70 comes in handy. So um, I could like just zoom out and get like kind of wide stuff, and then also do tighter stuff there too. And I'll keep the lenses next to me so I can swap them around and stuff if I want to. And then if I see any other spots that I can move to without like feeling like I'm stepping on people, then I'll do that too. But yeah, I think that like a lot of the experience when I'm at a show is like if I feel like I've gotten a lot of shots like that I wanted, like if I feel like I've got like things that represent the artist or like the show, then I won't take as many pictures. Like I'll still have my camera on me. And then like if something happens, like if I saw someone bringing out like the paint, then I'd be ready. But like there can come a point where I'm like not expecting to get much more out of a set or a show, like photography wise, and I can just kind of like chill and enjoy it, which is cool. And it's also like, I don't know, if I'm taking like I guess a couple of things. Like if I'm taking like a gajillion photos during a set, like I'm like really self-conscious about like the clicking of the camera the whole time, which in some venues like matters more than others. Like at the if I've been to gigs at a church more than once, and it's just like really echoey and loud, and so it's like horrifying every time I take a picture. So like I don't want to I don't want to feel annoying. So that's part of it. And then also like I don't want to just give myself a ton of work afterwards, because I spend a lot of time like processing the photos afterwards, which is like pre-COVID, when I would go to like, I don't know, like 3 shows a week or whatever, literally any free time that I had outside of work, if I wasn't at a show, I was working on photos from shows. And I enjoy doing that. Like I think that's a lot of fun. But it's also like since I got in the habit of going to so many things, like I got a lot better at like trying not to create more work for myself and being like a bit more efficient in how I was shooting. Because like, I don't know, I could get like a kind of portrait style shot of someone like 20 different times, and maybe the 20th one will have like some cool new unique thing, but also like I don't really need to. Like I don't know. I just need to like not overthink something sometimes.
That's really cool, and seems like that requires a lot of discipline. I mean, like, right? I mean, I'm sort of imagining that you don't run into the problem of running out of photo space on your phone because you don't have 60 pictures of the same thing.
Yeah, like I mean like the SD cards that I use, I can take like if I'm shooting like a say like if I were to shoot like Boston Calling or something, or like just any like festival length thing, I could easily take like over 1,000 pictures just from all the different acts or whatever. And that's not fun to go through afterwards. Like it's cool when you like get out the other end of it, but the beginning stages when you just have to like go through and like figure out like, okay, cool, these ones are like sort of out of focus, or like I don't know, there's like whatever small issue that like completely disqualifies a photo that'll like happen like I don't know to hundreds of photos, like literally hundreds of photos in that batch, and so it just saves you the headache later if you don't like just overshoot stuff.
Do you delete? Are you a deleter?
I delete some stuff. So this is probably not even like good the way that I do this, but like so my process like when I actually get the photos on my computer is like I'll do the initial pass, and so anything where like the focus missed, because the camera is like really good about like if I were taking pictures of playing a guitar, it could focus on the guitar instead of the person's face, and I prefer the person's face over the guitar. And like that's like something that I can be really picky about and like anal about and get annoyed by. But so like say I've got like I did a burst of 5 on someone and it looks like they all just focus on the guitar. If I'm like bothered enough by that, then all 5 of those I'll just like straight up delete. But if there's stuff where it's like, oh cool, I've narrowed it down to like 50 pictures from this set, and there's like I don't know, I've got or let's not say 50 because that's a high number. Let's say I've got like 25 pictures from a set, and then I see that I've got like 12 of the singer or something like that. Then I'm usually thinking of like the set as like how it would be presented online or something. Because like if I don't do it now since I'm not going to shows much now, but like I would shoot a lot of stuff for like also footing, and so if I'm sending in photos for that, I don't want it to be like feel like repetitive. Like I want the whole set to actually be like kind of interesting. So if I've got like 25 photos and 12 of them are of the singer, then I'll be like, okay, that's like a ton of that one person, like disproportionately. So then there's some that I will still like, but not as much as the other ones. So I'll just put them in like an outtakes folder, and nothing really happens with those. Like I don't post them anywhere usually, but I also don't delete them. So I've got like a lot of photos that are like they're not like bad, but they're not like as cool as the other ones that made the final set. That just kind of sit on hard drives. But I'll like delete stuff if it's just straight up bad. Yeah.
So we can look forward to the like 10-year show retrospective where it's like a 2 mile long corridor and you just have to, and it's just plastered with the sort of B-sides photos of every show.
Yeah, the B-sides photos that are like, oh, this is basically the same as something that actually got picked. But yeah.
I love that. Okay, so there's two directions I want to go in. Let me either one works, but let me take the let me do one first. So when you talked about earlier, you mentioned like so you got the photos you think you need, time to relax, chill out, watch the show. Do you take off photographer eyes? Do you take them out? Like, what is that? Like perceptually, on a really basic level, I would imagine if you're walking around, you there might be a degree of like composing shots or something as you're looking. I mean, it's got to be sort of second nature. So, like, to what extent? I guess maybe the question is like, what changes when you're like off the clock in terms of your perception, how you're viewing things, how you're engaging with the stuff around you.
Yeah, I think that it's really I think it's less like I don't think I really like take off the photographer eyes. Like I feel like I still kind of have that perspective even when I'm just kind of like watching a show for the rest of the show. But it's more to do with the like not wanting to feel like I'm doing the same thing or like getting repetitive photos or whatever. Like I think I'll still be looking at like the way that like light is hitting people on the stage or whatever or like in front of me. Like I don't think that I'll stop even when I feel like I've got pretty much enough pictures. And then there's also just like if someone were to do something unexpected, like I feel like I have to be ready for that. Like um, yeah, I think the thing with the light too specifically is that there's with concert photography you have like no control in most situations over the lighting conditions, and so sometimes it'll just kind of be like settling with what you have and just being like dealing with that. But if I've like already taken like 100 pictures of someone, I was like, well, I've got so many pictures, and let's say it's someone who just is on stage just holding a mic, like let's say it's I don't know, like a cool rapper or something, a cool rapper that is also just really relaxed on stage, so they're not like doing anything like drastically different. Um, so if this cool rapper like just stepped to a side of the stage and like the light was hitting them in a particular way or something like that, then I probably wouldn't be able to like resist that. If it was like, oh, like I've gotten like a lot of pictures of this person the whole night, like doing their thing, but right now there's just like there's something going on like visually that's like really cool, then I think I would have to take a picture of that even if I felt like I had enough pictures, because that can happen. Or like I don't know, people do unexpected things a lot, so I feel like I have to be ready for stuff a lot of the times. Like that's like a people have fun like getting jump shots at shows like photographers do, and that's like if you're watching Cal Marx, a jump can happen at like such a unexpected time. So like yeah.
Always got to
I
be
think
ready.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like I'm always like kind of ready, but I'm still able to enjoy the shows. And I think that for me, that's also partially just because like so much of I've been to just so many shows and photographed so many shows, so it's they're really just like linked like the like shooting a show and just enjoying a show. And I feel like when I first started taking pictures of shows, I kind of worried about like being distracted, like being like taken out of the moment or whatever. But I don't know. I think that it's for me at least, it's really nice. Like I really enjoy it. Like it's just kind of part of the experience for me. And getting to like take a picture that looks cool later, I think is something that like pleases me a lot. And I also think that like I'm just kind of like really awkward in general, like in a lot of situations. So it's kind of nice to always have like I'm enjoying the show and listening to the show and taking in what's happening, but I also have like something to do with my hands, I guess, or like something to like potentially do with my hands. So.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I often wish that I had a some, you know, that or just like a helmet I could put on that covered my face. And so, I mean, this actually leads pretty nicely into my other question, which was a big one. So, like, and I asked this as an historian and like thinking about it from that lens. Um, so you mentioned before doing like shooting for Awesome Pudding and say, okay, well, I want to make sure I get the full gig in there, right? Um, do you think much about uh, like documenting a moment or a time? Like your photo book is such an astonishing work because it does that, right? It is like it's this beautiful work of history that captures something that I've thought a lot about, like what this would look like as a like an academic historical project, and it basically you could do like an oral history of the scene or something, but your photos really accomplish that in this really incredible way. But I wonder like how self conscious is that process of like capturing something? Do you think about uh, needing to have a certain fidelity to the reality of the thing? Like, how aware are you of your interpretive lens, literally, um, in that space? Do you feel a kind of responsibility to that, or like what is your relationship to documentation as part of your craft?
Yeah, I think that that became a bigger thing like as people started responding to photos that I posted and like being into them and like digging them, and that is like super like jazzed about that. Like that's that's cool and like makes me excited and like makes me like I don't know, it added like a new dimension to what I was doing because I think that like initially it was just like, oh, I'm doing this for fun and it's fun and I think that photos are cool and I don't know. I just like having fun in general. I like to do things I enjoy to do. But I think that it was it got like a bit more serious when I would hear from folks like that, like how happy they were about like the kind of like documentation aspect of it. But I don't think that that's what I like originally was setting out to do. I was just like, oh, wouldn't this be cool? And then like I think taking a step back, it feels a lot cooler than I initially thought. Like I think with the book in particular, so I like that wouldn't have been made if it weren't for N because they sent me a message and were like, hey, you want to like work on a zine basically, and I was like, oh yeah, sure. And like that the process is like I have such like lovely memories of working on it because like it was so nice to be able to look back at so many things and like it's such a massive amount of stuff and like I've like seen so many like performances and stuff like that and it just feels really cool like I think like on a really personal level to capture like a moment in time in that sort of a way but I think also just for myself like it's a really neat thing I think because I don't know, like it's cool to be able to point to like what I was doing. Like when I was like, I can be like, hey, this is what was going on when I was like 24 or whatever. Like I think that that's super cool and like kind of like a nostalgic thing to be able to look back on. And that's also something that I've thought about a lot, like during stuff being locked down, because I think when I'm just out going to shows and shooting shows and just kind of like in a cycle of like go to work and then go to a show and then come back and then work on photos and then do that over and over again. It's just kind of like churning forward, and like I never really think about it much. But with stuff just kind of coming to a halt, I've I've I think been able to kind of like enjoy like my own work more, from like a documentation perspective, and also just like kind of appreciate stuff that I've done like from an artistic lens too, instead of just kind of constantly thinking about like my calendar and what's next up to do and stuff like that. And I think I feel the same way about a lot of other people's work as well, that do like similar things. Like there's a photo book that I got from someone in, I think, the Bay Area, and it's like all sorts of like punk shows. Like every show in the book was like a DIY show, and like there's like no stages or anything like that, like all kind of in weird places. And I got that book last year, and I remember looking at it and like I got so sad looking at it just because I like miss that sort of a thing so much. And I think that like I don't know, it becomes like really emotional to look back at that sort of stuff, like, and think about the documentation aspect of it. And I think that that's something that I have really grown to enjoy. And I think that that's also something that like I think a lot of people, that are into music photography will have like the goal of like becoming like a tour photographer or something, or like being able to like shoot like really big artists, and like oh, like I want to be able to like shoot like Beyonce or whatever. And like that's cool. And that's also kind of like, I don't know, maybe a bit of like a separate goal, than the stuff that I like to do, because I'm kind of like I'm really not very career focused when it comes to photo stuff. I'm mostly just interested in like doing what I'm doing, and I think that anyone that is career focused, that's cool too. It's just like a different thing. And yeah, I think that like especially going to a lot of local stuff, it makes it really cool to be able to look back on, because it feels a lot closer to home than like making a robust portfolio of a super big artist I can get on a cool plane. But yeah.
That is also interesting because there is something in active documentation. There's this sort of intentionality to it that also feels directional, like you're doing it for something. You're building an archive, right? It's interesting that you're doing that essentially just by doing, living the life you like to live, and one of the results of that is having this archive. And the other thing that is fascinating is that I would imagine, I don't know what you think about this, but to go back to the sort of the point of you having a particular interpretive lens, right? It's your shot. You're shooting literally from your perspective, and yet I know in my experience of looking at your photos, as I sort of said before, I mean, you really capture a moment. You capture like the space well. You capture what it feels like to be there. Um, is that like, I don't know, is that weird? Like you like you essentially, through the act of taking the photo with your lens, become all of the viewers for for forever thereafter. And it's and you manage to accomplish that feeling like natural, and feeling like the viewer, like I feel a sense of like, oh, this is the shot that feels familiar to me, even though it wasn't from my own perspective. So I don't know, like, do you ever think about that? Like, that's so cool.
Yeah, that's very flattering. I don't know. I guess I kind of think about it like in terms of like perspective stuff. I guess I just try to think about like when I'm taking a photo or like photos of a show. I think my main driving thing is that I want something that like represents the show very well. Like I think that's kind of like a kind of simple, driving thing. And so I think that just kind of is how stuff ends up turning out, I guess, with that being my goal that I have. But yeah, like I don't know, like I think there's also just, I like to, I mean, like I'll do like kind of like fun stuff, like I'll do multiple exposures or whatever, and like kind of like more like artsy stuff like that. But I really do love really just kind of straightforward photography of stuff happening. Like I mentioned earlier that I really like street photography. I think is really cool, and I also really like I'm weirdly into like news photography, like people that shoot stuff for like the New York Times or whatever, like pictures of like politicians at rallies or whatever, like stuff like that. Um, and I think that part of why I'm into that sort of stuff is because it's such a like a lot of it is about the people taking the photos, like the access that they have to the spaces and like them being in those places. So there's like not any sort of like cool studio lighting or anything like that, which I think I also really love, like stuff with cool studio lighting. Like I really love like fashion photography and stuff too. Like I guess I really love photography overall, but but for any sort of like documentary styles of photography, I do just something I love about it is just how straightforward it is and how like if you saw a picture of New York from the 1950s or whatever, like through that photo, like you get to kind of take in like the whole scene of the thing. And I think being able to like try and replicate something like that, like being able to take a photo and try and have it like really uh, let people know like what was going on in front of me is something that's kind of important to me and something that I really like about photography. So, yeah.
So this also leads really nicely. There's two final things here. This was actually this was an Eleanor request, and I should have forewarned you. So this might not be possible. But do you have like a photo you could pull up? We could screen share or something that you really like that you could just sort of walk our viewers through. Like this is why this photo is cool. Like I like this about it.
Yeah, let me. I just have to pull up my site and then I'll do it from there because that's the easiest way. I'm on my work computer. Then I have to. I'm gonna move. So I'm vertical right now because my monitor is is vertical. Because I don't have enough space for things on this desk, so I have to move around a lot of windows because there's another monitor that I use that's not vertical. So maybe like 30 seconds and
Okay.
cool.
No problem. Well, maybe I mean this is actually a terrible idea because of the distraction. But while you're doing that, could you maybe answer the what was going to be the question after that, which was, do you talk to other photographers? Is that like a big part of your sort of social life?
um I'm like awful at like interacting with people. So I like most of the photographers that I would talk to like when I see them at shows and not really like outside of shows and stuff. And that's like completely on me just being bad at that sort of thing. But I do love talking to other photographers and I also love hearing from other photographers about like process stuff and like I don't know, like if I'm at a show with someone that I know, like it's a good time. Like actually when I went to Boston Calling and shot that at the I'm not like a big festival person. I find them like really overwhelming and like it's like a lot. There's a lot of people and like a lot of stuff going on. But Boston Calling, like as a photographer, was a lot of fun because it was sort of like just seeing people that you've like seen all year, just all in the same place, and it's like a weird sort of like buffet because you get to just go from like stage to stage and like it's cool. Like you don't get to like hang out with people that much usually. And usually when you are hanging out with people, like it's hard to have a conversation at like Royale or something. You're just yelling at each other and that's hard on your throat.
That is it sucks.
Yeah, I feel like I sound like I'm 70 or something, but
No, that's
yeah,
that's very that's fully real. So
yeah.
so we got all these pictures. So yeah, yeah, like I mean, no, it doesn't be a favorite, but is there so one in particular you think, oh, like that's why like walk us through what you like about a shot.
I'm trying to think. There's, I'll do this. This is a fun one. Oh, whoops. So this is like somewhat relevant just because I was just talking about Boston Calling, but this was from the show that Wrong and Pyle did. That was I think the Friday like after the first day of Boston Calling, and this was at Great Scott. And I saw Pyle's set at Boston Calling the next day, and it was nice to be able to see. This was I think sold out, so it was like at Great Scott and two like really high energy bands that I like a lot. And I think that like this was like a very very cool show to get to go to, contrasting with the rest of the weekend, which was like Boston Calling and stuff. But so this was during wrong set, and so I think that like just the memory of the show is something that I like a lot about it. But the shot itself, I think, is neat just because there's like no faces in it, and that's cool. And like I'm not really super into Dutch angles, but this was like people pouring paint on the floor, sort of a thing. Like this was something where like it was like, oh, this is happening quickly, and I should get over here and take this photo and then like get out, and just kind of be ready for that. So yeah, this was I don't know. Do you want me to talk about like the technical parts of it too, or
Yeah,
like
yeah. Let's say like walk us through the shot. Like what's going on here? What do you see when you're looking at this?
yeah, I think that when I look at like a lot of my things, I mostly just think about like it's like you know the like memory palace exercise where you can just like walk down a street or whatever and like
Yeah, yeah.
things. I kind of like I used to be really good at if I looked at one photo that I took, I could like remember what like who was on that bill or whatever. And I'm less good at that now. But this one, I think I just think kind of more about like what I was physically doing. Like I was scratching on the floor and I was using a flash on a flash cord, and I brought the flash just because I knew that like something like this might happen, I guess. And also just kind of like any show that's on the writer's side at Great Scott, or like shows that are get on the writer's side, it's if it's at a small venue or at like a place where you can use the flash, it's pretty handy to bring one. So using the flash on the cord, so that's why the shadows are at like weird kind of like wonky angles, instead of like just head on. And yeah, I I'd have to like look at the folder, but I could guess that I probably like squatted to take that picture and then went back to wherever I was before instead of just kind of hanging out there. And yeah, I feel like I've said so little.
Well, I mean, like one like I guess one thing I think about is the light in this. Like you mentioned the flash, and I'm sort of seeing it. I don't know how to describe it, but it's really striking and beautiful. But the other thing in terms of the like your position taking the shot is the angle is coming from where the chord's coming from, which is like
Yeah,
what's really compelling about this.
yeah, that was definitely something that I probably thought about at the time. Like for something like this, I think that like I don't know. I guess there's like those like kind of like little things that I'll think about in the moment that I'd be like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if like like the chord was coming from like more or less the middle? Like that would be neat. Which it's not much technical stuff going on there. Just me being like, hey, wouldn't that be cool? Or like, hey, and like sometimes if something is like moving, it's like, oh, I should get a picture of that because it looks cool because it's moving. Like, so there's like a real like I don't know like cave person like
Well, and I'm thinking too. Like, I would imagine that given where you are, it must have been the case that this is like it's like the chord is like the path of movement into the crowd, and then so like that's the spot that's open, right?
yeah, that's definitely a thing too. Like that's something with like if I've seen Seed, the band Seed a lot, and that's the band where their singer will like move around, and so it's like I'll know like that pockets of the audience will open up because they'll be in different places and like kind of like make those openings happen. So with stuff like that, like with this, like I said that I had the flash because I thought that something like this might happen, like not like this literally, but I thought that someone could go in the crowd or something. So I think that like knowing to expect moments like those and then kind of knowing ahead of time where I want to be in that sort of a situation or being able to like make the best out of where I am in that situation, is something that I think about. Like if I was in like the back corner of the room or something and I knew that this was going to happen, then I'd probably just try and get on like my tiptoes, like take a picture going downwards of like a circle of people around a person, sort of a thing. So yeah, I there's like I don't know, like the combination of like kind of expecting some stuff and then also like making like decisions in the moment. Yeah,
It sounds like a real kind of dynamic process.
yeah, definitely. Like I feel like I could probably explain displayed a different photo a bit better than this one, but yeah, it's I think it's a pretty dynamic process.
Well, look, I've held you longer than I said I would, so I wanna be respectful of your time. Thank you so much for making time to talk. I really appreciate it. It's a joy to talk to you.
Yeah, thank you. This was fun.
Yeah. The way this works is because it's I say it's over, and then I stop the recording, but and then I say goodbye. You know.
Yeah, yeah.
So thank you very much for I'll just say the thing I just said a second ago. Thanks for taking the time. It's a pleasure to talk to you. And is there you want to? I mean, we just saw the site. Can you just give folks the URL so they know they can go check it out?
Yeah, it's oshoots.com. And I there are things that so the blog part is where I try and like the stuff that isn't posted on Instagram usually. It's like the blog part is like me just like cataloging the shows that I go to, but that one's actually behind. Like there are some shows in the COVID times that I've been to that I still haven't put on my site yet just because I'm lazy, I guess. But so yeah, it's a bit out of date, is what I'm saying. But yeah,
Well, I'm sure
it's
there's plenty of material for coming through and feeling nostalgic about a variety of times and places. So,
yeah.
also, if people want to get in touch, is there a way they can do that?
Yeah, so there's like a contact button on my site, which is probably the best way. Because I'm not on Instagram as much as I used to be, because it just makes me really sad now. Because nothing's really going on. I dropped my selfie. It was empty. It's fine. So the if anyone wants to contact me, the contact button on my site will go to my email, and that I'll be able to check better than like an Instagram DM. So yeah.
Perfect. Well, Omari Spears, thank you very much.
Yeah.
And ready? It's a wrap.
Cool.
Oh boy, I